Hey, it's Soul with another video, and this is my personal list of my least and my most favorite expansions in the World of Warcraft, along with why. Now let me stress this. This ranking is based on my personal experience, one among over, like 100 million other players. Some of you might understand me. Many of you won't. But I think sharing my perspective would be a little bit of fun, and it's another celebration of WoW. Anyway, let's do this, starting from the bottom of the list. I know Classic/Vanilla is not really an expansion, but I might as well mention it because it's also the time that I had the least fun in the game. And it was all my fault. I started playing the World of Warcraft from the very beginning. I never lapsed, but Classic WoW was probably the closest I've ever been to unsubscribing. Like I said earlier, I didn't find it to be all that much fun. Well, okay, maybe fun isn't the word, but it wasn't like I had terrific stories or experiences to share. It's just that WoW started out as this giant world to explore. These two massive continents full of story and promise and mixed disappointments. It was a journey I took with just about every class and race, but it all ended with those social hurdles that at the time I didn't care to overcome. I did keep myself busy discovering the lore for the sake of discovering the lore, but I never got connected with a team or a guild. I was mostly alone. So of course that sucked, especially with no group making tools available at the time. I consider myself reclusive, which is like not the best trait to have playing an MMO, obviously, so there was no endgame for me. I passed by most of the dungeons without even knowing it, and raiding just didn't interest me. The big draw of group content failed to draw me in. All that got me through Classic was the sheer lack of experience and the curiosity of the world that made me want to explore all of that. So for me, Classic WoW was interesting, but endgame was really shallow. And to get anywhere back then, it was grind. It was a lot more tedious than it is now, and far less rewarding. As for how I got through, it was mostly the anticipation or the promise of what was next. I think that's what separates me from those who are a big fan of Legacy Realms. I'm the type of player that wants to eventually move forward.
You are not prepared.
The Burning Crusade's shining moment for me is most notably marked by the beginning of my guild, Prisoners of Warcraft. I know this is unpopular, but BC is also the least fun expansion that I've played. But it's not because of my guild. In fact, my guild probably saved me from unsubscribing altogether because my endgame options were still really limited. BC for me was probably the most grindy expansion for me. This is thanks to the fact that there were a few compelling things to do like heroics and crafting gear. But between repping up with the Scry babies and the pains, the real pains of grinding heroics on a low pop server, and being unable to progress into 25-man raiding because of my small guild and the roster poaching, it was a struggle. Flying was okay. It was new and neat, having a new layer of gameplay to unlock with flight, like Ogrelaw and Skedis and that Netherwing island. I hope that over time there would have been an evolution to flight over the years, but sadly the opposite happened. But it was enjoyable during the Burning Crusade. It was new. It was good. As for the expansion as a whole, BC helped me learn just what a WoW expansion entails, which is a fraction of what had first come. And that's understandable. I couldn't really expect a massive experience like Classic WoW, and I was a bit less of a noob by now. I was a bit less dumb. I had Thoughtbot and Alakazam, and I started getting into add-ons. The content for me and my guild was very limited. We literally just did Karazhan week after week for however long that was. But little did I know that this guild would be the best feature in this game to this very day. If the Burning Crusade happened to have flex raid technology, it would have been a lot higher on this list.
And what, Gul'dan, must we give in return? Everything.
Like many longtime players, I got used to the usual formula by the time Warlords of Draenor was announced. I got to understand the systems, and by this time I had a bit of experience with game development cycles and understanding design principles, all that sort of stuff. I got an invite to the WoD beta, so I had the unique opportunity to study the game systems and provide feedback. I made my attempts to get my voice heard, but was unsuccessful. I did a pretty complete study involving the garden, mine, and profession buildings, and I basically concluded that the garrison is way too powerful. Please do something about this. I really wanted to like it, and I probably would have if it was designed to be a strong complement to the outdoor world and not a replacement for it. It didn't help that Draenor itself felt very small because the real estate was reserved for content that I didn't care for, and I'm talking about all those endgame funny zones. I would have liked to have seen WoD with a vision of completeness. I didn't care too much about Farallon or the whole Blade Spire sort of thing, but instead I think of Gorgron and Shattrath City. There's just a lot of missed opportunities after what feels like the abandoning of Shattrath City and the lack of an Ogrim Doomhammer story. I didn't find WoD to be very fun for reasons that I stated many times, but I still liked it more than Classic or BC because group content was accessible, thanks to my guild. This will be a trending thing, by the way, with the guild. When raid night came, enough of us still showed up to get something going, and flexible mode raids were a godsend. Especially because we're a casual guild, I always hate telling someone that I don't have room. So as a raid leader, that saved me.
Pain. Agony.
Cataclysm was alright. The overall experience is the reason why I'm naturally against the whole speediness of travel in WoW these days, since flight was the thing from the start, and there were those nifty portals from our capital cities. Looking back, I could close my eyes, think of any expansion except for Cataclysm, and I can think of the roads crossed, the mob packs that I had to punch through, the little bumps and turns, all of that. The environments in WoW are almost always memorable. When I think about Cataclysm though, it feels as if I experienced it in fragments. Like I'm navigating from island to island, and there's no terrain in between. Dungeons weren't a problem for me and my guild. There was a lot of talk about how the beginning of the Cataclysm heroics were tuned way too high, but I was part of the group that didn't really notice this because I had always ran with my guild. The most frustrating things though were more personal. This involved my raid schedule. I started a new job, and with the commute and the work hours, I would always end up showing up really late to a raid. It wasn't a big deal because I run the guild, but early on I either had to give up my spot as a raid lead, or I'd had to raid from a nearby Starbucks. There just wasn't a lot of time and opportunity to play, but I raided as much as I could. What helped me here was my discovering the auction house and the glyph market. If it wasn't for my side hustle and eventual buildup of my glyph empire, I would have gotten really bored. Maybe not bored enough to quit, but this helped me realize that there was a lot more to the game than what Blizzard spoon feeds me through raid and dungeon and story content. Each of WoW's systems gives us the chance to create more stories, and that was a lesson well learned. It was here that I was also really tested in my ability to lead my guild and my raid team. There was a huge bit of drama during the Firelands tier where I had to choose between progression with a few toxic players or losing those players and almost all of our progression. I chose the latter, which sealed the ambitions of my raid team up to this day. Prisoners of Warcraft is a team of casuals, and I think we're happier for it. Transmog made me even happier.
The day you were born, the very forests of Lordaeron whispered the name Arthas.
Wrath of the Lich King was a very solid piece of monotony. Yeah, don't get me wrong, it was a lot more accessible than Burning Crusade, so that automatically made it a lot more fun. And my job at the time gave me a lot of free time to play and to make raids. I became official GM of my guild at the time, so that was pretty exciting too. I learned a lot about being a guild master in a really short amount of time. Early on, I merged our guild with a larger and more casual guild than ours, which turned out to not be the best idea. It reinforced certain behaviors and policies that I carry today, like not having officers, but giving my more assertive teammates a little bit more flexibility to voice opinions and make judgment calls. Those are my breezies. As for the expansion itself though, there was a good bit of stuff to do, but outside of raiding, I ran out of things to do pretty quickly, aside from carrying people through heroics for resources and otherwise just grinding stuff out. Notably, the Argent tournament for me was truly a test of tolerance for daily grinding. But there wasn't a lot to do otherwise. On my realm at least, Wintergrass was a place for good times and usually easy wins. Our realm was balanced favorably for my faction, so that's probably why it felt fun. The raid structure though was kind of a mixed bag. I mean, yeah, my team could raid, but now I felt like kind of like a second-class citizen being just a 10-man raider. Back then there was that feeling of inferiority, knowing that 25-man content was both easier to run, at least if you can get the people, and it was more rewarding with the gear. The challenge was that I didn't want to run it with 25 people, but I felt the pressure to at least join up with weekend pugs because we could at least take the gear down from 25s over to 10s, and that didn't feel right either. But I had a lot of fun with raiding because it was like a new beginning. I wasn't just stuck in Karazhan the whole time, I could actually move on to new raids once we were done with the previous one. That might seem like small potatoes, but for me, it was really, really refreshing. It made me feel like I was part of the flow.
From you, I have learned patience, tolerance, and faith.
There are a few things in Legion that prevent it from being my favorite expansion, because it's good. It's really, really good. Legion gave me tons and tons of things to do, but more so it gave me the choice to do a lot of things, or whatever minimum to, for example, keep my artifact weapon leveled. And I like that a lot. But then there's, more than anything, there's the theme. The threat of the Legion, the end of the world, the awakening of a celestial titan, the army of the light. This growing ultimate threat was really tiring after stuff like the Lich King and Deathwing. It's funny because this is all thanks to Garrosh, who wanted some petty revenge and ended up opening the door to events that sail far, far above the scope of skirmishes, war, and internal conflicts, which are Warcraft's roots. I never wanted to be the High Lord. I just see the target in front of me, and I want to tank it, and I want it dead. But with our characters getting caught up in this grand story, I'm not sure how much fun I'll have on this kind of ride. I've talked about it numerous times, and with BlizzCon just around the corner, I'm holding out some hope that the story will still feel epic, but won't feel as grand, if that makes any sense. I'm not holding my breath though, you feel me? There's that one little thing called RNG that the more talkative people are trumpeting day in and day out like it's the first time that it's happening in an RPG. It hasn't been an issue for me though, since I don't need some max Titanforge thing just to tank an instance on Heroic. But taking major glyphs and folding them into legendaries did piss me off. The consolation there is that glyphs became a lot more profitable, so I'm not that mad. On top of that, there's tons of cosmetics and new art, events, and bold new directions that the WoW team went down that might have had mixed results, but the point is that they tried. I'm one of those people who embraces risks versus stagnation, knowing that there will be failures down the road. Warlords of Draenor might have shaken the faith of a lot of Blizzard fans, but I think Legion restored or at least bolstered some of it. Mists of Pandaria was a series of gifts, evolutions and risks and flashy things. The cinematic and in-game animations really stepped up with a strong delivery. The theme was explorative, invading a foreign land and basically doing more damage than there would have been if Pandaria was still left alone, and that's a trope that's been used many times before, but I think it was delivered well. Never mind Pandaria being Pandaria. I never rolled a Pandaren and I didn't care for the race as a whole, but I found the idea of making an otherwise neutral race choose either side pretty fascinating. Mists of Pandaria gave us the backbone for scenarios. It gave us challenge dungeons, which were the foundation for keystones. It gave us pet battles, which I didn't care for, but it created the platform for pet collecting, further reminding us of just how big this game can be when you start hunting all these things down. It gave us flexible goddamn raiding, which is, so good. And these things could have been brought in during other expansions, but hey, it came here, so Mists of Pandaria gets the credit. It was the last time the game really acknowledged flight, with that faction for the Wind Serpent and needing flight to complete some dailies on your own. But for the most part, Mists gave a sense of simplicity, as far as simplicity goes in the World of Warcraft. It was a grounded story of internal conflict, of balance, and the failed promise of peace. And it had a moral, to show players the cost of giving in to your negative emotions. Just don't give me a questline where I have to complete a battleground, okay? That's kinda messed up. So that's my ranking. Feel free to share yours and your reasons why in a comment below. Thanks for watching. I hope you liked the video, and if so, like it and feel free to support the channel the best way you know how. I'll see you for the next video. Stay safe, stay happy, and stay breezy.